Yeah, hello, good day. You are welcome back to Ace with Horace. And today's episode, we are going to tackle a topic under financial accounting or principles of what? Accounting. And basically, today, what we are going to look at is financial statement under principles of accounting. When I say financial statement, we are going to prepare the financial statement for a sole proprietor. So when it comes to the sole proprietor, we just look at two main statements for the sole proprietor, where we prepare the statement of profit or loss account, where now, because the standard has been updated, when you get a question, they will instead ask you to prepare the income statement for the firm. It is the same as the statement of profit or loss account. Then moving on, when you are done preparing such a statement, the next statement you'll be required to prepare is the statement of what? Financial position, where we mostly used to call it the balance sheet. Now, because of the update in a standard, it is called the statement of financial position. And today, our focus is just going to be on a sole proprietor. It means that we are going to pick a question where the business is just owned by one person. All decisions are made by the person. And with such a business, they have what? Engaged in some transactions that has been recorded for them, and they prepare the trial balance. So they'll give us a list of items where we have items on the left, some numbers on the left, some numbers on the right. So always when you see any number on the left, it is known as the debit side of the trial balance. Then the numbers on the right is known as what? The credit side of the trial balance. Though they'll give you some items and their numbers. So if they give you an item like sales and you see its number at the credit side, then it means that anytime you should see sales, its number will be at the what? The credit side. So when I'm teaching or in the process of solving a question, I'll be talking about left side and the right side of the trial balance. It means that the debit side and the credit side of the trial balance. That is basically what we are talking about. So when we start solving the question, I'll project the trial balance of the question. Then in addition to the trial balance, they give other information, and it's known as the additional information. So in the process of teaching, I will ask you to go for certain things at the additional information side. It means aside the list that they give you, the informations that we're giving down there, sometimes they number them. So every information and what it implies. So if I need any information over there, I will ask you to check the question, go over there and go and bring such an information in your statement. So without much I say, let's look at the first financial statement that will be preparing for the sole proprietor, which is known as the income statement or the statement of profit and loss. But before you prepare this statement, it is so important for you to understand why do we even prepare this statement for a sole proprietor. For a sole proprietor, after they have engaged in their transactions or business, they want to know, did they make any profit or they made a loss? So the essence of the statement of profit or loss, that is why the statement goes like that, profit or loss. So you prepare that statement so that the sole proprietor will know whether they made a profit or a loss at the end of the year or at the end of their financial year. When you are done, then you now base on this to know their financial position. And that takes you to the next statement that the question will ask you to prepare the statement of financial position, which is also known as the balance sheet. Why? Or what is the essence of preparing this statement? That one will help the business know what it owns. So something you own is known as your asset. So if I ask you what are the assets of the business, what I'm trying to say is that what are the properties of the business that the business do own? Then when I ask you to find me equity, so when it comes to the statement of financial position, we'll just be showing what the business owns and what they owe. So there are people that they owe, we'll give them a name. Then there are things that we own, we'll also give it a name. So when I get to that statement, I will explain better. But I'm going to start with the first statement, which is the statement of profit or loss. Or I've told you, because of the update of the standard, which is the accounting standard, we call it the income statement. So when I'm solving, I'll be using the new names. Some of you might be used to certain names, maybe at the SS level or due to somewhere or something you've read somewhere. But today, I would advise you to be using the new names that is in the standard. Because if you should solve any accounting question this year going forward, those are the names they'll be using. But I'll tell you their old names and the new names so that when you solve questions like that, you do not confuse yourself. So without much I say, let's delve into the question. We'll project the question on the screen just now. You read along with me, look at the informations given. I'm not going to go through all the information, But I will start solving the question, and as at when we need a particular information, we'll go there, go pick the information, then we can solve our first statement, which is known as what? The income statement, or the statement of what? Profit or loss account. So without much ado, let's delve into the question, understand the question, look at the requirements, then I'll start solving. Then I'll tell you how to go around it. So let's start solving. We are going to solve the question. Okay, we are going to solve the question. So look at the question that has been projected on the screen right now. And what you are going to do first is go to the requirements and we'll find out what is the first requirement we are being asked to solve. When you get to the requirements, then I'll now help you to know how to start answering the question systematically so that you can get all marks that the examiners are expecting. Are we together? So let's look at the question. What did I say? Let's go and look at the requirements. After everything, the last side, you are seeing you are required to. So let's look at the question together. As you can see on the board, let's look at it. They said, prepare the statements of profit or loss for the year ending 31st December 2023. So that is the first requirement. But before you answer this requirement, I'm expecting you to first read the preamble before the list. They will give you a particular information before they give you the list. That in that particular information, you will find out the name of the firm. Why do we need this? Because with the marking scheme, when we are going to mark you, the first thing we want to know is, have you written the name of the firm? Because you cannot just prepare a particular statement without telling us who you are preparing the statement for. So the first thing you are supposed to always do is get the name of the firm, write it, underline, then when you are done, come and write the requirements that you are going to prepare for the firm. So let's look at the name of the firm, then we'll take it from. So now let's go and read the question together. As I said, read the information given before the list. With the list is also known as the trial balance. So let's read the information together. They said the following trial balance was extracted from the books of Amadi Enterprise, a second hand bag dealer as at 31st December 2023. Here, what do I need? I said I read this information because I'm looking for the name of what? The firm. And that is the first thing you always write before you go and write the requirement. So the name is Amadi Enterprise. So in your answer booklet, you write the name of the firm, then you underline it nicely. So let's go. So the name of the firm is Amadi Enterprise. So I will indicate it here, Amadi Enterprise. Amadi Enterprise. Then you underline it nicely. What are we preparing? We are preparing the final account or the financial statement of Amadi Enterprise. And because Amadi Enterprise is a sole proprietor, it is just two statements that are expected for you to prepare for them. And that is the income statement or the statement of profit or loss account. And when you are done, you prepare the balance sheet or the statement of financial position. And so I've written that I am dealing with Amadi Enterprise. The next thing is, what am I going to prepare for Amadi Enterprise based on the question? So let's go to the requirement of the question together. Then we know what we are preparing for what? Amadi Enterprise. So let's go to the requirement. The question says, you are required to prepare the statement of profit or loss account for the year ending 31st December 2023. So let's write that this is what we are going to prepare for Amadi. Since you are going to prepare it, there is no need for you to add the word, the prepare. Start from the statement and write exactly how the question brought it. Do not paraphrase because it comes with marks. So let's go and write what we are preparing for Amadi Enterprise. We are preparing the statement, so you indicate it. Statements of profit or loss for the year ending 31st December 2023. So when you are done like this, what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to underline it nicely with your ruler. Then when you are done, you are supposed to give me a column of the various things. So you create two columns by indicating that under this I'll be writing money. Then you also create another column here which shows under it will be writing something. But please, these columns do not represent debit or credit. No, this is just for presentation sake. So this will help you present your answers in such a way it will be so clear for the examiner to give you all the marks you deserve. So these columns, you just create it, then I'll show you when to write something under what, then we'll take it from there. This is not like the trial balance in the question where we have the debit side and the credit side. This is just a column we bring for presentation sake. So let's head into it. What are we preparing? We are preparing the statement of profit or loss. And one thing I want you to put in mind is that the essence of this statement is to get what? The net profit for the firm. Either the firm will make a net profit or a net loss. So when we finally get either a net profit or a net loss, we can say we are done with the question, which is the first one we are preparing. But the question is, what do I need to find? What do I need to prepare? What do I need to find first that will help me get the net profit? One thing I want to put in mind is that before a business can know whether they made a profit or a loss, they need to sell. Because if you don't sell, how will you know whether you've made a profit or loss? So this one is giving you an idea that before you can get the net profit or loss, you first have to find out how much the firm sold. So the first thing you always find for this statement is your sales. If you don't see sales, the question can ask you to find revenue. So the first item I want you to always put in mind that we need to find for the firm is the what? The sales of the firm. However, we are saying that sometimes when you sell, it is not all that can be turned as your sales. Why am I saying this? For example, if I indicated that I sold 10,000 Ghana cedis, then upon selling, some of my customers did return some of the goods, saying that they were fought with it. Can I still say I have sold 10,000? No. I need to always deduct what they returned to me. Then I can finally get how much I got from my sales. And that is known as net sales. So it means that even though the first thing is sales, sometimes when you sell, some of your customers will end up bringing you some of the items they bought from you. Hence, accounting is saying that even though the first item I'm telling you to find is sales, sometimes you need to deduct what they will return. So what I want you to do so that you can know what to do very well is that you tell yourself you are starting with sales. So you bring the sales of the organization. Then when you are done, you have to go and check or find out from the question whether your customers did return some of the product or not. And I'll give you an item you need to check in your trial balance or your list, which indicates that your customers have returned. If they do, then you need to deduct how much they did return from your sales. Then you get what is known as net sales. So assuming we check and they do not return anything, then it means that with this business, their sales is their net sales. So if they do not return anything, we'll put 0 there just for revision's sake. Nobody will mark you down. Some students can also decide to ignore because they didn't return anything. So let's start. Let's go and check the question and find out their sales. Then later we'll check whether the customers did return some or not. If they do, we will deduct. If they don't, it means we are still going to deduct, but this time I will deduct what? 0. Then it gives us the net sales. Shall we? So let's look into the question and find out what was the sales. Because what did I say? With this question, you are looking for the net profit. But if you do not find out how much they sold, it will be difficult to tell their net profit. So let's go into it and find out how much did they sell. But I will show you something. So what are we looking for? Sales. But with accounting, we have different names that could be used to represent the sales. So as students, if you learn that, always find the sales. What if you go through the question and there is no sales in the question? It doesn't mean they didn't sell. If they didn't sell, then we were not going to even find a profit for them in the first place. So they sold. Why? The reason why you can't find sales in the question is because they have used the other names for sales. So today, I will give you the other names that some question could use to replace sales. So when you get any question, when you are looking for sales and it's not there, I will ask you to find the other names. Then it means that that is the same word, sales. So shall we? Let's look at this question and look at the sales given. If they don't give sales, then I'll show you the other names. Even if they give sales, I have to still show you the other names. So when you're solving other questions, it becomes so easy for you to find your sales figure. Shall we? So what did I say? When you write your heading, you write the name of the firm and you create the columns, the first thing you look for is for sales. So do not rush and come and write the sales. What if the question do not use sales and they use the other names? You have to write the name the question uses. So before I start the question, let me give you the names we use in representing sales, so that when we look for sales and we don't find it, we'll look for the other names and we'll take it from there. Alright, so let's look at it. So take your notes and write these names down. That if I'm looking for sales and I don't find sales, these are the other names I will find in the question. That means it's the same as what? Sales. So let's go. So the actual thing is known as what? Sales. If you do not find sales, I will urge you to look for an item known as revenue. If you do not find revenue, look for a name known as turnover. So these are names we use in place of what? In place of sales. So sales, revenue, or turnover. Then if you don't find turnover, sometimes they combine and write sales, revenue. Sales, revenue. So these are the names that we use in place of what? Sales. Either sales, revenue, turnover, or sales, revenue. They mean the same. And that is the first thing you should always look for. So let's go and look for this in our question. So look at the question that has been projected. Let's find out. What are we looking for? We are looking for sales, revenue, turnover, or sales revenue. Then that will be the first item we'll bring under our statement of profit or loss for the firm. Let's check the question together. So the first item they gave me was inventory low. So let's look through the list and find out sales. Let's look for sales. So we are looking through the list and we have seen sales at the last but one item. Right after purchase, we have sales, then capital follows. So it means that in this question, they use the word sales. In some question, they would have used revenue, turnover, or sales revenue. So since the question have used sales, then it means that our first item will be known as what? Sales. Assuming they use revenue, it means that your first item will be known as what? Revenue. So that is how we go about it. So since we've been able to write the names, I will now play next so we can continue with our statement. So if there's any note, I will put it on the board and you have to write it down for your revision sake. So let's proceed from there. So since the question did use sales, we'll come to our statements. Then we'll write the sales as the first item. After you have written your CD sign, come to the next line and write your sales. So when you write your sales, you will now put it under the first column. Because when we are done, the final answer will take it to the what? The second column. So let's write our sales figure and take it from there. So from the question, our sales figure is 1.6 million. 1.6 million. So we have a sales of 1.6. So when you write the item, then you write the what? Its what? Number. And that is what we do. What did I say? So this is how much the firm sold. But I told you something, that we are looking for the net profit. After getting your sales, don't assume that all are for sales. I said go and check. Probably some of your customers did return some of the goods. And what did I say? You will get to know, that will show you that the customers did return some. After you have written your sales, I will urge you to go and look for a particular item. If it is in the question, then it means that your customers did return some of the goods to you and you need to deduct that one from the sales. So what do we check? You check for an item known as return invoice. So when you go through the list and you see a word known as return invoice, then it means that the customers did return some to us. And we need to deduct that one from the sales so we can get the actual sales from the firm. And that sales, I said, is known as what? Net sales. So let's go and check our list and find out if there is any word known as return invoice. Like I did for the sales, if you don't find that word, they will give you other words that represents it. So let's look at that one. So we'll look for the word return invoice. Return invoice. If you don't find it, look for the word sales return. Sales returns. Sales return. If you don't find it, then the question will give you just the word returns and it will give you two figures. where one will be at the debit side and one will be at the credit side. So the question is, if you see just returns and it has two numbers, one being at the debit side and one being at the credit side, one of them is your return inwards. And which of them? It is always the one at the debit side or the left side. So we'll first look for return inwards. If it is not given, we'll check if they use the word sales return. If it is not given, then we'll now check if they use just the word returns and they've given us two numbers. Then the one on the left or the debit side is always known as the return word inwards. So let's go and do the expression together. Let's look at the question again that has been placed on your screen just now. Shall we? So what is the... We are looking for return inwards or sales returns or just return. Let's go through the list again. So I am checking my list just now. From inventory, we go downwards to general expense, insurance, bad debt, wages, sundry expense, vehicle running expense, furniture, repairs to shop. Then we saw returns. So it means that in this question, they didn't use return inwards or sales return, but instead they used just the word returns. And as I said when I was giving you the note, it means that they will give you two numbers. One will be at the debit side and one will be at the credit side. Which one did I say is your return inwards? I said the one always on the left or the debit side. So let's go and pick that particular figure, and that one will be the return inwards that we are looking for. What does it imply? It implies that after we sold the 1.6 million, our customers did return some of the goods to us. So we have to deduct it from the sales and we'll get the actual sales, which is known as your net sales. Are we understanding? So let's pick our word, return inwards. Even though the question just wrote returns, when you are coming to write it in your statement, you know the one on the left is return inwards. So you have to indicate it in your statement as well, return inwards. And I said, what are we going to do? We are going to deduct. And in accounting, if you are coming to deduct, let me show you how we do it. So after you have written your sales, on the next line, you write less return inwards, because we are going to deduct. And in accounting, if you are deducting an item, you bring the word less. It means you are deducting. So sales minus return inwards. Then you write it under where the sales figure is to indicate you are deducting from it. So what is our return inwards? I said when you check the returns in the question you are seeing on your screen right now, they gave us both, they wrote just returns and they gave us a number under the debit side and a number under the credit side. And I said the one that always stands for your return inwards is the one under the debit side or the left side. And since you are deducting, you will put that value in what? In brackets. So let's do that. So bracket 5180. Then, so it means this minus this, and in accounting, our equal to is a line. So you write this minus this equal to, do not forget the line, because the line helps the examiner to know this is equal to. Then what did we just find? I said when you deduct the return inwards from your sales, you get an item known as what? Your net sales. So let's punch it together and look for the net sales for the firm, then we'll take it from there. So the net sales is the sales of 1.6 million minus our return inwards, which is 5180. Then we have 19. So you write it under the second line, the next line under the what? The second column. So let's bring it. The next line. So write 1594820. And what is the name of this item? I said it is known as what? Your net sales. Why? Because even though we sold, they did return some, and that name is known as what? Return inwards. When you deduct from the sales, you get what is known as your net sales. So we found the first item that will help us get our net profit. So shall we? So since we have, we'll come to the next line and indicate the name of what? The number we just found, and it's known as what? Net sales. So we've been able to find our net sales. We've been able to find our net sales. So we've been able to find our net sales. But don't forget that the essence of this statement is to get the net profit. But you can't get the net profit if you do not find out how much you sold.
So how much we sold is known as the net sales. Why net sales? Because after the sales, we did return some. And that is known as what? The return inwards. So when you deduct from the sales, you get what is known as what? Net sales. So after net sales, what's next? That is how I want you to solve the question. After you've gotten your net sales, you ask yourself, what is next? Because the ultimate thing I'm looking for is my net profit. But I found what is known as net sales. After that, what's next? After that, you are going to deduct something from this net sales so that you can get something known as gross profit before you can get the final answer, the net profit. So before net profit, you need to find what? Net sales, then deduct something from it to get you what is known as gross profit. Then you deduct something from the gross profit, which will give you what? The net profit. Then you are done. So since we have our net sales, let's go and deduct what I said we should deduct from the what? The net sales. And what do we deduct? What we deduct is known as cost of sales. Cost of sales. So anytime you get your net sales, the next thing you should tell yourself is, I'm going to deduct an item which is known as what? Cost of sales. So let's go and deduct. And in accounting, what did I say? If you are deducting something, you call it less. So less cost of sales right after the net sales. So let's do that. So under the net sales, you come and write less cost of sales. So what do? Anytime we write an item, we try as much as possible to go and check the list if it has been given. But with this question, they will not give you the cost of sales. You are supposed to find out what are the things that when I bring together, it will be known as the cost of sales. So I said, if you've written less cost of sales, that item's number will not be given. So you have to go and find out what are the things that when the firm brings together, it becomes the cost of sales. We'll go and look for all those items, bring them together, then the final answer will be known as the cost of sales. What do we say we are doing the cost of sales? We'll be going to deduct that cost of sales from the net sales. And what is the answer? If it is a positive number, it becomes gross profit. If it is a negative number, it becomes what? Gross loss. So let's see what the firm will have before they get their net profit. Is there a net profit, a gross loss, a gross profit, which will now translate to either a net profit or a net loss? Let's go and find the cost of sales. So as usual, we are going to write our note. So if we should get any similar question, we can be able to solve it. So let me give you the note on the gross profit, then we'll take it from there. Good. So if you are looking for the cost of sales to deduct from the net sales, these are the notes. So let's look at the notes. Anytime you are looking for your cost of sales, I'll give you a simple abbreviation that you'll be putting together to get the cost of sales. So anytime you are looking for your cost of sales, this is the abbreviation I want you to use. And it goes one after the other. The abbreviation is known as OPCRC. What did I say? So this is the easiest way you can get the cost of sales for any firm. OPCRC. So you write it in the form of what? A list. Then it means that there are items in your trial balance or the list that do start with this word alphabet. And it becomes so simple for you to get the cost of sales. OPCRC. Then I'll show you what to do. Then it means that the final answer, it is known as what? Cost of sales. And when you get it, you will deduct it from your sales figure or the net sales figure. Then you get what is known as what? Your gross profit or loss. So what is the O? What is the P? What is the C? What is the R? And what is the last C? So let's write that. What is the O? O stands for an item known as opening inventory. Opening inventory. Then the P stands for an item known as what? Purchase. Then the C stands for an item known as carriage inwards. Carriage inwards. Then with the R, what does it stand for? The R stands for return outwards. So we'll write all these, then we'll look for them in the question, then we'll take it from there. So return outwards, then the last C is known as closing inventory. Closing inventory. So when you bring these items together, it gives you a thing known as what? Cost of sales. So what did I say? when we get to the net sales and you are coming to deduct the cost of sales, I said these are the items that when you bring them together, it will give you what is known as what? The cost of sales. OPCRC. OPCRC. Then let's bring them together. What does it imply? What this one implies is that this is what we do. You add the first three. You add O to P and to the C. Then with the RC, we do not add. For that one, we deduct. So in accounting, what did I see? If you are deducting something, you bring what? Less. So since you'll be deducting return outwards and closing inventory, then for that one, you bring your less. So we can change the abbreviation. We can say OPC less RC, then we are good. So OPC less RC, it means with the RC, you will less them. Less R and less C. Then when you get your answer, you get what is known as what? Your cost of sales. So that is basically it. Now, since we have our notes, I'm going to glean it from the board, then we'll take it to the statement and look for our cost of sales. So shall we? This is our notes. I'm sure by now you are done writing. Let's go and look for the cost of sales in our statement together, then we'll take it from there. Perfect. So I'll leave it for now and let's come to our statement. So in our statement, we said less cost of sales. What is the cost of sales? We don't have. So I want you to draw a line to tell the examiner you are about to find the cost of sales. Then we bring what? Our abbreviation. Should we do the abbreviation together? What do we say the abbreviation is? OPCRC. So we'll start taking the item one after the other. The first item I need is what? O. So write it. What do we say the O is? The O means opening inventory. So let's look for it together. So let's write. We have opening inventory. And this is what I want you to do. Since you are looking for the cost of sales first, before we deduct it from the net sales, I want you to find that cost of sales under the first column. When we get our final answer, which is the cost of sales, we will write it under the sales to indicate we are deducting. So this one, let's list the items under the first column. Then we'll look for our final answer, known as what? The cost of sales. Then we'll take it from there. Have you understand it? So let's do it together. What is the opening inventory? We are going to look for it in the question. When you go to your trial balance and you are going to look for your opening inventory, the only place I want you to go and check is the list of items. Don't go to the additional information. With opening inventory, it is always among the list of items given. Do not go to the additional, because if you look at the question, they've given us a list of items, then after that, there is what? Additional information. We do not go there when we are looking for the what? The opening inventory. Hence, where do we look for? With opening inventory, always go to the list. You will find an item known as what? Inventory over there, then you pick it. If you don't see inventory, the old name that they used to mention is known as what? Stock. But now, what we use is inventory. So let's go to the question and go and look for our opening inventory. By looking at the list and picking it, then we are good to go. So look at the question on the screen right now. Look at the question on your screen. What is the inventory? It happens to be the first item given. So our inventory is the first item given. So let's look at our list and pick the inventory figure. Let's look at it. So with the inventory, when they give us the inventory on the list, they said it's 180,000. That is your inventory. So if you are looking for opening inventory, just come to the list. The inventory you see over there, that is your opening. So since it's 180, let's write the figure down. And I said, where do we write it? Under the first column. So let's do that. So we have 180,000. 180,000. And we go back to our abbreviation. So after O, the next thing we write is what? P. What is P? P is known as what? Purchase. Let's go look for the purchase. So we write purchase. And with the purchase, we'll go back to our list and look for the purchase. And look for what? Purchase. Shall we? Let's look for purchase. So when we look through our list, our purchase is after the returns. So look at the question together. After returns, they gave us the item purchase and they gave us the number. The number was what? 970,000. That is our purchase. So we write the purchase under the opening inventory. 970,000. Then I'll give you something about the purchase figure. Let me give you something about the purchase figure. When you are done writing the purchase, I will always advise you to go and check for something in the additional information before we move to the next abbreviation, which is the C. What is that thing I want you to check? Because sometimes some examiners can be very tricky when it comes to the purchase. When you are done writing the purchase, before you bring your carriage invoice, I want you to always go to the additional information and go and check for an information over there. That information might affect your purchase before we even bring the carriage invoice. What is that information? When you go to the additional information, you might get an information where they are saying that the sole proprietor withdrew some goods. If you see withdrawal of goods, you have to go and bring that withdrawal of goods and come and deduct it from the purchase before you bring your C, which is the carriage invoice. What did I say? The abbreviation for cost of sales is always OPCRC. But when you write your P before you write your C, I said what? You go and check the additional information. You read them one after the other and ensure there is no additional information that reads that they reduce some goods or they took goods for personal use. When you see something like goods withdrawal, you have to come and deduct it from your purchase. So what did I say? Let's do that. Let's go to the additional information. Look at the question on your screen. Aside the list, they said the following additional informations are provided. We are going to check them one after the other and find out if there were any information concerning goods withdrawal or the business taking the sole proprietor taking some of the goods for personal use. Let's go and check together. So additional information one was about allowance for receivables. He has nothing like goods withdrawal. Additional information two was about rate and rent has been paid in advance. It has nothing to do with goods withdrawal. Then they said inventory as at 31st December. It has nothing to do with goods withdrawal. Let's look at IV. They said a bill of 6150 for vehicle expenses was outstanding. It has nothing to do with goods withdrawal. Then let's look at the VIN. VIN says the enterprise provided depreciation for the following. So when we read through, there was nothing like goods withdrawn. So hence, there is nothing to deduct from purchase. It means we can go back to our abbreviation and continue as such. And what is the next one? OP. The next one is what? C. So we'll go and pick the C. Perfect. So since we have checked our P, and I said after the P, which is the purchase, you have to go and check your additional information and find out if there was any goods withdrawal or the business owner taking some of the goods for personal use. Since there's nothing like that, we can continue with our carriage invoice, which is the C. So we'll bring the carriage invoice, find out if it's in the question. If not, we'll just put 0. It means that there's no carriage invoice. So let's look for the next one. So the next one is C. C is carriage invoice. So when you write your carriage invoice, we'll now go and check the question or the list and find out if there was carriage invoice given. So let's look for our carriage invoice. So look through the list. It started with inventory, vehicle, trade receivables, accumulated, trade payables, drawings, general expense, allowance, rent, insurance, bad debt, discount received, discount allowed, bank and cash, wages and salary. There was nothing like carriage invoice. So it means that carriage invoice was not given. So you put 0. For revision's sake, some you can ignore the carriage invoice and just proceed to the next abbreviation. But I just want to bring the carriage invoice and write 0 so that you can use it for your revision. So when you get a question, you know after purchase, you check for goods withdrawn. If it is not there, then the next thing you should check for is what? Carriage invoice. So now that we have done our carriage invoice, we move to the next abbreviation. And what did I say? The RC we less than it needs to be deduct. So let's bring our R and we'll bring our C. So the R is less return outwards. Return outwards. Now, what did I say about the returns? When the question when you are solving a question like this and you get your return outwards, you first have to check your list if there is return outwards. If there's no return outwards, just like I did for the return inwards, we have names that they can use to replace the return outwards. So let's first look for return outwards. If there's nothing like return outwards, you'll find a word known as what? Purchase returns. Purchase returns. So what are the names for return outwards? We have either return outwards or what? Purchase returns or what? Just returns. And they'll give you two figures, just like we did for the return inwards. So when you have a question where they've given you just return, and they've given you two figures, one figure will be at the debit side, the other figure will be at the credit side. The one at the debit side, that's why I told you it is known as your what? Return inwards. So it means that the other figure is your return outwards. So in this question, we find out they gave us return. We use the one at the debit side as our return inwards, and we deducted from the sales. So it means that the remaining number on the credit side or the right side is known as your return outwards. So return outwards was given. Let's go and look at our question. Look at the question on your screen right now. The returns, we have used the one on the left on the debit side. So it means that the one on the right on the credit side is your return outwards. So put this in mind, then you solve it as such. So shall we? Let's look at the question. What do we see at the right side of the returns? We see 18695. So that is your return outwards. And what are we doing? We said we are lessing. So when we are lessing, we'll put that figure in what? In brackets. Let's do that. So brackets 18695. Then it will be in bracket. Why? Because we are lessing return outwards. And all these that we are doing, the essence is to find the cost of sales that will be lessened from the net sales. So I am putting all the things that I need for the cost of sales here. When I get my final answer, I'll go and write it under the what? The net sales. Then I'll deduct from it. And the answer, if it is positive, it will be known as gross profit. If it is negative, it will be known as what? Gross loss. So let's continue. So since we have done the R, the last abbreviation is known as what? The closing inventory. And I said that one too, we will do lessons. So let's less our closing word inventory. Let's go there. So we have less closing inventory. Less closing inventory. Then opening inventory, what did I say you do? I told you with the opening inventory, you will always check just the list or the trial balance. Do not go to the additional information. But with the closing inventory, the only place you can find it mostly is the additional information. So let's go to our additional information. We'll go and see another inventory there. That inventory is always known as your word, your closing inventory. So let's go and look at the question. So look at the question on your screen. Look at the question on your screen. Let's go to the additional information. What did they say? They said additional information. Let's look at it one after the other. Which of them has to do with inventory? The I was allowance. The II was what? Rent and rate and rent. The III is what? Inventory. So I've seen inventory. So it means that the closing inventory that we are looking for, where did I say you find it? Come to the additional information. The inventory you see there is always your closing or inventory. So let's make it. And we are lessing. So what does it imply? The number will be in what? Bracket. So let's go there. So our closing inventory is what? 80150. So let's write it and put it in bracket. So we have bracket 80150. So we've been able to get all the abbreviations. So it means that we are going to add what we can add. Then if you are in bracket, it means we are deducting. So we'll add all the things and deduct the ones we have to deduct. Then when you deduct and you get your final answer, that is the word, the cost of sales. And we went deduct it from the net sales. Then to give that, if it's a positive number, I said it's known as what? The gross profit. If it is a negative number, it is known as what? The gross loss. So let's go and add it together. Let's do it together. Let's do it together, then get our cost of sales. So what did I say in accounting? When you do all this equal to, then you do a line under the table. So let's punch it together. We have 180,000 plus 970,000 minus 18695 minus 80150. So let's punch it. Then when we punched it, look at the thing. I want you to go and write the final answer, not under the line, but on the same line, under the net sales, or the second column. Then here too, you roll a line first, on the same line where the things ended. On top of the line, write the answer you just got. Okay, it means that all things equal to what we just got. So let's write our answer. When you punch, what did you get for me? We have 1 0 5 1 1 5 5. This is the cost of sales figure. What are we doing to the cost of sales? We said net sales less cost of sales. This is our net sales. This is our cost of sales. And since we are lessing this, what did I say in accounting? It means you in what? Bracket. So let's put it in bracket to indicate that this minus this. Then the answer you get, if it is a positive number, it is what? A gross profit. If it is a negative number, it is a gross loss. And that is what we are going to stand on to find our net profit or loss. And we can say we are done with the statement of profit or what? Loss. So as usual, let's punch it together. So what we have? 159 4820 minus 1051155. Let's punch it. After punching, just like you had, we have 54365. Since it is a positive number, then it means that it is a gross profit. So let's go and write the name of the item over there under this closing inventory. What is it? A gross profit. So let's write. So it means that we got a gross profit for the firm. And this is a good way to find the net profit. So since you've gotten your gross profit, I'll show you the next thing to do. Then we can finally say we have gotten our net profit or loss. Then we are done with the statement of profit or loss what? Account. Are we understanding? Lovely. So shall we? Let's go and find out what is the next thing we do when we get our gross profit. I'll give you some notes, then we base on the notes and proceed. So let's go and write our notes together and find out what we do after we have gotten our gross profit or loss. Let's proceed. When you are done with your gross profit, the next thing I want you to find, okay, is known as other incomes. Why? Anytime you are done getting your gross profit, the next thing I want you to come and add to the gross profit are known as other incomes. Did the business engage in anything that gave it any other income aside their gross profit? If yes, we'll find all of them and we'll come and add it to the gross profit. Then we proceed. So anytime you are done getting your gross profit, the next thing I want you to find is your what? Other incomes. So I'm going to give you notes on how to identify all incomes in the question. Then when we check them one after the other and we get them, we'll come and add it to the gross profit. Then we can proceed. Are we understanding? Let's do that. So let me give you notes first. What will fall under other incomes? Anytime you are solving the question and you get your gross profit and you are looking for the other incomes, this is the thing I want you to do. Go through your list. If you see anything ending with received, it is an income. What did I say? Go through your list first. Check the items one after the other. Anything that ends with received, not receivable, but instead what? Received, it is an income. So when I find two items ending with received, all of them is an income. I will come and add it to the gross profit. That is what I mean by that. So this is what you do to identify all incomes in the question. First, check for anything that ends with received. It is an income. Then when you are done, you will check for another thing. Anything ending with income. Are we understanding? So if you are looking for your incomes, what did Horace say you should do? Go through the list. Look for anything that ends with received. Bring them. When you are done, go through the list again. Anything ending with income, you bring it. Sometimes with the income, instead of the thing ending with income, it will start with income. But that doesn't mean it's an income. The only time you regard something that starts with income to be an income is when it comes with the word from. So for instance, if you are going through the list and you find out a word known as income from investment, it is an income. Why did I pick that one? Because it comes with the word from. But assuming I'm checking the list and I see something like income surplus, it is not an income. Why? I didn't see the word from. Assuming they wrote income from surplus, that one would have picked it. But because they just wrote income surplus, because I did not see the word from, I will not regard it as an income. The only time I regard something as an income, if it starts with an income, is when it comes with the word from. So if I see income from investment, because of the word from, I'll pick it as income. Even though I said pick item that ends with what? Income. So aside items ending with income such as investment income, rental income, these ones, they are all ending with income. Automatically, they become what? An income. But I said sometimes too, instead of ending, you see a thing starting with income. When do we pick it? Only when it has the word from. So income from investment, I will pick it. But if it reads as income surplus without from, we do not pick it. Are we understanding? Lovely. So let's proceed. So aside these two, then I want you to check for one last thing. That thing is known as allowance for receivables or provision for bad debts. With this one, it is quite technical, but it's so simple. Let's look for our first two items. Then when we are done, we'll go and check the allowance. I will show you what to do so that you can know whether it is an income or not. You see, one thing is, these first two things I've mentioned, they are always an income. But with the allowance that I'm talking about, sometimes it is an income, sometimes it is what? An item known as expenses. So when we are looking for other things like expenses, if we check the allowance and we realize it's an expense, that is where we'll bring it. But for now, we are on income items. So I'll show you when we should consider allowance to be an income. Then we'll take it from there. But before that, let's do our inspection and find out if there is anything ending with receipt, if there is anything ending with income. Then we'll bring those items. Then when we are done, we'll also go and check for the allowance for what? Receivables or allowance for bad debt. Let me add it to the notes so that we will do all of it together. So we are going to do that, then we'll take it from there, right? All right, good. So are we ready? Let's now go and fish out our other incomes. And what did I say? Let's look at our notes. We are going to check for anything ending with what? Received. Let's go to our question. So look at the question projected on your screen. Let's do it together. We are going to check for anything that ends with receipt. Let's start from the top to the bottom. Why are you checking? The list or the tribal list. Let's do it together. So the first item is inventory. The second one was vehicle into brackets cost. The next one is trade receivables. The next one is accumulated. The next one is trade payables. None of these items are ending with receipt. That is why I'm not regarding it. Because as of now, I'm looking for my other incomes. And I said I'm looking for the first thing, anything ending with receipt. Let's do it. So we have rent and rate. We have insurance. Please don't skip it. Just do it one after the other. As of now, we are looking for things ending with receipt. So if I should see any of the items, I will not mind it. Why? Because I want to do it systematically so that I don't miss anything. So let's first look for anything that is with receipt first before we come to the income and the allowance. So let's do it one after the other. Let's look for anything that ends with receipt. Let's do it. So after the rate and rent, the next one was insurance. The next item was what? Bad debt. Look at the screen, you can see it. The next one is the discount received. Have we seen it? We have seen something that ends with what? Received. So it means that this is our first income item. Let's go and write it, that we are adding it to the gross profit. So let's write it. So gross profit, then we are adding, so add discounts received, because we have seen something that ends with received. But one thing about this discount, in some questions, instead of writing the discount received, you will just write discounts. Then it means they have to give you two numbers. One will be under the debit side, and one will be under the credit side. So you might see an item under the debit side, you might see an item under the credit side, and it is just discount. What does it imply? Why am I saying this? Because in this question, we've seen it being written as discount received, but in some questions, we'll just write discount. Then they'll put a number under the debit, then they'll put a number under the credit. One of these is a discount received. So if you are solving a question of that sort, and you get to your gross profit and you are looking for your income, and you get a discount in the question, one of them is a discount received, which is supposed to come there. So which of them is always your discount received? Discount received is always the one at the credit side or the right side. So put it in mind, when you see discount and you have one at the debit side and one at the credit side, the one under the credit side is the discount received. Then the one under the debit side is the discount allowed. So put this in mind. So when I see just discount and I see two numbers, I know one of them is received, which is supposed to be my income. So I'll come and pick the one at the what? Credit side. That is why I'm teaching you this. So in this question, we didn't need to check which one we should pick, because they separated them and they gave it to us differently. So the only one I need under my what? My income is the discount received. So I'll just come for the one on the right. But here, it has been separated. So I pick it as it is. That was just by the way. Let's go back to our scan. We are looking for anything ending with receive. The fact that you've seen one doesn't mean you should end it. Why? Because the list is long. Look at all the list. If that is the only thing that ends with receive, then we are good to go. But this one, we've seen discount receive. Let's finish checking the list. If you are sure that is the only thing that ends with receive, then we are good to go. So let's go and look at it. After the discount received, the next one we saw was discount allowed. That one, it doesn't end with receive, so we move on. Cash and bank, it is not ending with received. Wages and salary, it is not ending with received. Sundry expenses, it is not ending with received. Vehicle running expenses, it is not ending with received. Furniture and fittings is not ending. So we realize that when we check the rest of the items, none of them is ending with received. So when we check for anything ending with receive, it is just one item. So it means we have checked the first one. What is the next thing I said you should go and check if you are looking for your income? Anything ending with what? Income. Are we understanding? Lovely. Let's go and check. Do we see anything ending with income? Let's check from the top. When we're checking, we saw inventory, vehicle, trade receivables, accumulated, trade payables, drawings, general expense, allowance for receivables, rent. None of them ends with income, and none of them starts with what? Income. So it means that when we are checking in this question, we have nothing ending with what? Income. It means that we are going to check the last item under the income. The last item under what? Income. And it means allowance for doubtful debt. This is where I said we are going to check. Sometimes it can be an income, sometimes it can be an expense. When is it an income? When we realize it's an income, I have to bring it here. When I realize it's an expense, I will not bring it here. I will bring it when I am looking for my list of what? Expenses. Let's go and look at it. How do we check for the allowance to know whether it is an income or it's an expense? Then we take it from there, shall we? Let's go and do it. Now, the only time I want you to check if it will be an income or an expense is when it appears twice. So if I check my question and the allowance for bad debt or allowance for doubtful debt or the provision for bad debt, they do not appear twice, I don't need to even check whether it's an income or it's an expense. It means when I get here, I will ignore. The only time I shouldn't ignore when I get here is when it appears twice. What do we mean by that? It means that the allowance must be in your trial balance or your list, and you must also go and see it mentioned in the additional information. It means it has appeared twice, and hence, since it has appeared twice, I need to check whether it will be an income or an expense. Are we understand? But if it appears just in your list, and you go and check the additional information, and you don't see them talking about allowance, it means you don't check whether it is an income or an expense. Ignore. Sometimes you can check your list, it is not there, but when you check your additional information, it will be there. It means it appeared what? Once. What does it imply? Do not check whether it will be an income or an expense. The only time we'll check if it is an income or an expense is when you check your list, it is there. You come and check your additional information, it has been mentioned. Then we need to compare and find out whether it is an income or an expense. So let's look at this question. Do we need to compare or not? Let's check whether it appears in the list and the additional information. Then we'll compare. If it appears just in the list and not in the additional, or in the additional and not in the list, we'll not compare. Let's do it together. Let's look at the list. Look at the question on the screen. Let's look through the list. If you find out anything like allowance for bad debt, allowance for doubtful debt, or provision for doubtful debt, that those are just names we use to represent them. So let's see which one the question is. Let's look at the question on the screen. We have inventory. So always when I'm checking something in the list, I start from the top so that nothing skips me. That is what I want you to also do. Are we together? Let's look at it. Inventory, vehicle, trade receivables, accumulated depreciation, trade payables, drawings, general expense, allowance for receivables. I have seen it in the list. So what I'll do is, before I'll check whether it will be an income or not, after seeing this mentioned in the list, I'll go and check the additional information and find out whether they did mention allowance for receivables. If they mention, then now I have to go and compare and find out whether in this question it is an income or it was an expense. So let's go to the additional information together. Let's look at it. They said the following additional information, that is where we are. Let's check if one of them mentioned allowance for what? Receivables. Then hence we need to find. Let's check. Allowance for receivables in the I. It was mentioned. So it means that in this question, the allowance for receivables is in the list and it's in the additional. Hence, you need to check whether it will be an income or an expense. How do we check? Write the amount in the list and write the amount in the additional information. Then we'll compare, and I'll show you how to compare. But for now, somewhere in your question booklet, this one you have to do it somewhere. When you realize that it is an income, then we'll come and add it. But when you realize it's an expense, later we'll bring it. So let's go do it together. So with allowance, write the amount given in the list, which is the same as the what? The trial balance. Then you compare it to the one in the additional information. Then we'll know whether it is an income or an expense. Now let's get rid of the values. The one in the trial balance or the list, when they gave us the allowance, what was the figure? Allowance for receivables was 3750. Look at the question. So write it down. The list 3750. Let's go and check the additional information. One thing about the additional information, sometimes it can give you the value. Sometimes it will ask you to find the value before you can compare it to what is in the list. So let's check our additional information since we've written what is in the list. In the additional information, they said allowance for receivables should be adjusted to 5% of trade receivables. It means that in this question, I need the value of the allowance in the additional information, but it was not given. Instead, they were telling me how to find it. So I will find it. What did they say I should do to find it? They said I should go and find 5% of something known as trade receivables, which will be in the list. So you find 5% of what is in the list so that you can compare it to what we picked. Let's go. They said 5% of trade receivables. So you don't find 5% of the allowance for receivables. No, you will find it on an item known as trade receivables. Let's go and look for it. So the one in additional information, It is 5%. So 5/100 times, off means times. Times what? They said trade receivables. So let's go to our trial balance or our list and look for an item known as trade receivables or receivables, not allowance for receivables. No. 5% of trade receivables. So you look for an item known as what? Trade receivables, and you find 5% of it. That is what you compare to the one they gave in the list. Let's look at the trade receivables. So from the top, always, I said it. So inventory, vehicle, then trade receivables. So it is this figure that I am going to find out and find 5% of. Then I can compare to what the allowance that we saw in the list. Let's look for it. So we have 5% of trade receivables figure, which is what? 120,000. So we find 5% of 120. Then we're going to compare it to the 3750 in the list. Are we together? Let's look for it together. Let's watch it. What is 5% of 120,000? Let's look at it. 5% times 120,000. It gives us 6,000. So you see, it means that the allowance in the list or the trial balance is 3750. Then the allowance in the additional information, we happen to find it to be 6,000. So this is what we are going to compare. Let's compare it together. When we are comparing, look at it. This is what will help you know whether it is an income or an expense. When you compare the two and you realize that the one in the additional information is greater than the one in the trial balance, then it is an expense. It is known as increase in allowance. Why? The allowance was 3750, then it has increased to 6,000. Hence, it is an expense, not an income. So I'll not bring it. When is it an income? It is an income when the allowance given in the trial balance or the list happens to be greater than the one in the additional information. Then it is known as decrease in allowance. And that is the only one you are supposed to add to the word gross profit. But in this question, after I did my comparison, I realized that it has increased instead. So you now go and add that increase rather to our expenses. So when we go forward and we are looking for operational expenses, we'll add the increase in allowance as part of it. Why? Because when we compare the allowance for bad debt or the allowance for receivables in the list and the additional information, we realize that it has rather increased. So we such, we add to the expenses and not the other incomes that we are solving. So in this question, when we are looking for our other incomes, after doing the 3 checks, we realize that the only item is your discount received. So you add just the discount received to the gross profit. So let's go and get the value of the discount received and let's add it to the gross profit. Then we take it from there. So what is the discount received figure? The discount received figure was 37,725. So you add it to the gross profit. Let's do that. So 3725. Add this figure to the gross profit. Then we can proceed to the other part of what this statement. Then we can say we are done. But we are not done yet. Add the other incomes. In this question, the only income we saw after we checked through our list was discount received. So we'll add the discount received to the gross profit. Then we can move on to the next stage of what you are supposed to find. The next thing you are supposed to find is add the two. Let's go. So 543,665 plus 37725. So when we add it together, we have what the amount 581,390. So this amount, mostly we call it the net income. The net worth income. Some you can decide not to give anything to this figure, but you can also call it the net worth income. But for me, I prefer not to write any name for this figure. What do I do to this figure next? what we do is that it is this figure that is going to help us get our net profit or loss, which is the essence of this statement. How do we get the net profit or loss based on this figure? What you are going to do is that you are going to deduct something known as operation expenses or operational or administrative expenses from this figure. So what does it imply? It means that the next thing to do is you are going to less administrative or operational expenses from this figure, and that is what we are going to do. So I'm sure by now you are done writing this. So we are going to continue from here, where we are going to list our expenses. Then we'll come and deduct it from this figure. Any answer that we get, if it is positive, it will be known as net profit. If it is negative, it will be known as net loss. Then we can say you are done with your statement of profit or loss for the year ending 31st December 2023. So let me give you some time. Write the notes, then we'll come and look at what? The expenses. Then we'll deduct it from this. So I will clean the board and I write on top our what? Our net income that we got, which is the 581390. Then I'll start listing all the expenses. Then I'll deduct it from it. But in your notes, continue from where we've ended. But for me, because of the board constraint, I'll claim it and I'll start listing the expenses that I'll be deducting from the 581390. Then will note for yourself. That will help you revise very well and prepare very well for what the exams. Now, as we said, at Ace with Horace, we make accounting so simple. And I'm sure by now, some of you have been able to see how easy it is to prepare the statement of what? Profit or loss, or your income statement. So let's move to the expenses. Lovely. All right. So just like I said, we are not done with the statement of profit or loss for the year ending 31st December 2023. Why? Where we got into, we got the net income, and I told you because of the board constraint, we had to pause there, clean it, then now let's assume this is where we got into, and it's the net income. What did I say? The net income was as a result of what? Where we added our other incomes to the gross profit. So now that you have gotten your net income, we are saying that we are going to use that to find our net profit or loss. What did I say we do to find that? I said you deduct something from this net income. And the thing you deduct is known as what? Administrative expense or operational expenses. So you less all operational expenses from the net income. Then you get what is known as, if it is a positive number, it is known as net profit. If it is a negative number, it is known as what? A net loss. So let's go and look for our operational expenses. So I will go through the work one after the other and identify all expenses, then we'll add them together. Are we understanding? And that will be the operational expenses. We'll come and deduct it from the net income. If it is a positive number, it becomes what? A net profit. If it's a negative number after deduction, it becomes a net loss. So let's do that together. So the next stage, you write less operation expenses. Then you underline nicely. Why? We are going to look for the list of what? The operating expenses. So let's make it operating. So operating expenses. So less operating expenses. And to identify your expenses, this is what I want you to do. Look at the question on the screen now. We'll look for the items from the start to the end and find out what are the expenses we have in them. I will explain each item to you now so that you don't mistake anyone to be an expense. The ones that are very obvious, you see them because they'll add the word expensive. But I don't want you to be skimming. What I want you to do is we want to pick it one after the other so that no item will skip us at the end. Are we together? So let's start from the top. Then we'll pick our expenses one after the other. Let's start. Look at the question on the screen. The first item we saw on the trial balance is inventory. We've used this already, which was not an expense. Then the next one you're seeing is vehicle into bracket cost. The fact that you have seen cost in bracket close to the vehicle, it doesn't mean it's an expense. When I give you the cost of a non-current asset, non-current assets are properties of a business that could be seen and touched. And an example could be your vehicle, your building, and the rest. So the cost of it is not an expense. It just shows you the value of the assets that you have. So if you should see any asset into bracket cost, don't mistake it to be an expense. No, the cost gives you the value of your assets. So the vehicle, even though you are seeing cost by it, it is not an expense. So we have to move on. Don't forget what we are looking for are what? The expenses. So let's go back to the question and find out the next item. The next item is trade receivables. Trade receivables is not an expense. Trade receivables stands for what? Those that are owing you. They are the people we have sold to on credit. And trade receivables are individuals, we the business, we've sold to, and they are yet to pay us. So trade receivables, even though they are owing us, it is not an expense. An expense is something the business we spent money on as a result of what? Our operations. That is what we are looking for. So the trade receivables is not what? An expense. The next thing you are seeing is known as accumulated depreciation. And they gave the accumulated depreciation for the vehicle and the what? Furniture and fittings. Accumulated depreciation stands for what? Depreciation that we brought from last year. What is depreciation? In accounting, we believe that when you use an asset, which is a non-current asset like your car, your building, and the rest, because of you using it or because the business is using it in your operations, it will depreciate or the value will fall. And that is what we call accumulated depreciation because we brought it from last year. This is not an expense. The place where we find an expense that has the name depreciation, I'll let you know. But if you see accumulated depreciation in your question, in your list like this, do not add it to your expenses. Are we together? Let's move on. Lovely. So the next item is trade payables. Trade payables is our individual that we are owing. Expenses are things we have paid for. But here, it is people we are owing, so it means we are yet to pay, so it is not an expense. Even though it stands for people you are owing, since you've not paid, it is not part of your expenses. So let's move on to the next one. Drawings. Drawings do stand for monies or goods or anything that the owner did take for its personal use. So if you see drawings, it means that the owner, here the owner was what? Amadi. It means Amadi took something for his personal use rather than for the business use. Hence, we call it drawings. That one is not an expense. So when you see drawings, please do not bring it as part of your operating expenses. So you see, so far I am checking the items one after the other. I have not identified any expense. So I have not written anything till I find it before I write. After the drawings, what do we see? General expenses. We have seen an expense. So what do? We write the name first, but before you write the amount of the thing you have found, I will always tell you, go to the additional information and go and read if something is said about the expense that you've identified. Which expense have you identified? General what? Expense. So we'll write it down. General expense. Expenses. Then here I'm looking for the expenses to come and deduct this from this figure. So if you are looking for your expenses, put it under the first column. When you gather all expenses together, then we'll come and deduct it. So for now, all expenses will be written here. But what did I say? If you have identified general expense, it doesn't mean rush and come and write the figure. Why? I said go and read the additional information. Find out if anything has been said about general expenses. If you realize nothing is said, then you can write the amount as it is. But if something is said, I will show you what to do. Let's go and check our additional. If they said anything about general expenses. So let's go to our additional information. I was about allowance. I was about rent and rate. I was about inventory. Then IV, what did they say? They said a bill of 6,100 for vehicle running was outstanding. It has nothing to do with what? A general expense. Let's look at the next one. V, the enterprise provided following depreciation. It has nothing to do with general expense. So it means that in this question, nothing was said about general expenses. So we can write the amount as it is in the list. Let's go and check the amount once again. The amount of general expenses happens to be 97,500. So let's write it down. Under the first column, 97,500. So that is our first expenditure. So after general expense, let's go and look at the next thing. Then we can determine whether it is an expense or not. Let's move on. So after general expenses, we've seen allowance for receivables. Do you remember we did a particular working for allowance for receivables? Yes. We checked the one in the list and we compared it to the one in the additional information. Then what we did, we told you sometimes it's an income, sometimes it's an expense. Then when we did it together, what did I say is an expense? So it means that you are listing your expenses. So hence, if you check and you realize allowance was an expense, this is where you bring it. When did I say it's an expense? I told you it will become an expense when you compare the one in the list to the one in the additional. And you realize that the one in the additional is greater than the one in the list. And when we did it together, check your workings. When we did it together, the one in the list, let's do it again. So we read somewhere. When we did it together, we realized that the one in the list was 3750. Then the one in the additional information, they said we should find 5% of the trade receivables, which we have 120,000. So they told us to find 5% of trade receivables, which was 120,000. So when we found it, we got 6,000. Then I said when I compare, we realized that the one in the additional information is greater than the one in the list. Hence, it's an expense. So expense of how much? You do not write any of these figures. It is the difference that you come and write. So we have 3750, then 6,000. So you compare the two and you find the difference. So let's find the difference. We are going to get 6,000 minus 3750. Then what we are? 2,250. So the difference is what we write as what? As the expense. The difference is what we write as an expense because it is what? An increase. Why would I say increase? Because the one in the additional information is greater than the one we saw in the list. So there is an increase in allowance of 2,250. So that difference is what you will come and add to your expenses. Assuming it was a decrease, we would have added it to our gross profit. So let's bring it. So when you come to additional information, you write increase in allowance for receivables. Then you bring it 6,000 minus 3750, and the difference is 2250. So that difference, because it is an increase in allowance, you always add it to expenses. That is what I was talking about. Why did I bring this here? Because when I was checking the list, the next item I saw was allowance, so I've worked on it. So assuming there was a decrease, I would have already added it to my income and my gross profit, and I wouldn't have brought it here. But because I realized an income and an expense, that is why I didn't add it to the gross profit, and I've added it to the list of what? Expenses. Let's go back to our list and continue with what we're doing. So after allowance, the next thing is rate and rent. This is an expense. Why? This is how much the business paid on renting a particular space. So since they have paid for such, then it's an expense. So rate and rent is an what? An expense. And what did I say? Before you write the figure, you go and check the additional information. If anything is said about this rate and what? Rent. Let's look at it. So right there, the item first. Rate and what? And rent. Let's go and check if something is said about it. If nothing, we'll write the amount as it is. If something is said, we'll deduct or we'll add. Let's go and check. I'll tell you what to do. So let's go and check our additional information. I was about the allowance. I've worked with it already. Then the II, they say rate and rent. It means something has been said about it. What do they say? They will either say two things. They will tell you either there is an advance payment or there is a prepaid. It means the same. If you see prepaid, it means an advance payment. If you see any word like prepaid or advance payment, when you get that figure, you have to come and deduct it from the rate and rent you see in your list. But if you see something like owes or outstanding or accruals or arrears, I know the words are much, but write it down. So if you see prepaid or advancement, it means that figure that is a prepaid, you come and deduct it from the figure that they've mentioned in the word trial balance. But if you should see these words, let's go. Owings, arrears, outstanding. Then with this one, what do? We will come and add to the one in the list. So let's see what they said about rent and rate and find out whether we'll be adding this figure or we'll be lessing this figure. Let's check. So in the additional information II, they said rate and rent has been paid in advance. It means advance payment. And what did I say we do to advance? When we get that figure, we'll come and deduct it from the rate and rent we are seeing in the trial balance. Let's look at that. So they said rate and rent has been paid in advance by 2 months. Note that Amadi Enterprise pays 2,000 each month. So what is the prepaid? What is the advance payment? If you paid something for 2 months and they pay 2,000 every month, what does it imply? It implies that we need to multiply the 2,000 by what? The 2 months. So that we can get the prepaid that we'll be doing what with it, we'll go and deduct. Why? Because I said if you see advance payment or prepaid, we deduct. So let's go and do that. So when you see such, you will come back to the list, and since you'll be deducting advance payment or prepaid, under the rate and rent, the next line you say less. Why? Because we are deducting. So less advance. And what is that advance that we are less? They said every month Amadi pays 2,000 and we pay 2 months in advance. So you multiply that 2,000 by 2 so you can get the advancement. So 2,000 by 2. And that figure is what we are going to deduct from the rate and rent in the trial balance. Let's go to the rate and rent, bring it and deduct what? Our advance. Let's look at the rate and rent. So the rate and rent figure is 42,000. So bring the 42,000. Now, this has to do with what? A list of those items. So the first one is rate and rent. Bring the figure itself, 42,000. Then we are saying that among this, we are lessing the advancement. And the advancement is 2,000 times 2. Why? Because they said they pay 2 months in advance. Just that one is what? 2,000. So you have to multiply them and get that prepaid. Now you are coming to less. So let's less it also. So you get 4,000. So less. I told you anytime you are lessing, you put that figure in what? In brackets. That is what we do. Let's look at it. So we are done with the rate and rent. Now we move to the next item on the trial balance. What is the next item on the trial balance? It is insurance. Insurance is an expense. Why? These are the monies that businesses pay as a result of them insuring their businesses against fire, water, and the rest. So since they pay, then it is what? An expense. Let's bring the next expense we've identified, which is what? Insurance. So we write insurance. Should I write the figure? No. What did I say? When you get the item, go and check additional information. If nothing is said about it, we'll come and write. If something is said, we'll do what we have to do. Let's go and check insurance. So we said we saw I allowance. We are looking at the additional information. I was about allowance. I was about rent and rate, which we've done. I is about inventory, which we've done. IV, they said a bill of 6,000 was for vehicle running. It has nothing to do with insurance. Let's move on. Then the V was about what? Depreciation. It has nothing. So it means that with insurance, nothing was said about it. So write the figure as it is. So let's go and look for the insurance. Go back to the question and look at the list again. So the insurance happens to be how much? 7,500. So let's bring it. Since this one we are not deducting, it will not be right. So 7,500. Then we move on to the next one, expense. Let's move on. After insurance, let's look at the list. Look at the question on the screen. After insurance, we have bad debts. Bad debt is an expense. Anytime you are working and you see bad debt, it is an expense. If you don't see bad debt, you see irrecoverable debt, it is also the same. And that one is also an expense. Why? Bad debts are monies that people that are owing you, they said they cannot pay, or you realize they cannot pay. So it becomes a bad debt. It means money you can never get back. It becomes an expense to you. So anytime you see bad debt in the trial balance, you have to add it to your expenses, because what? It is what? An expense. So with bad debt, you realize that when we are checking the additional information, nothing was said about what? Bad debt. So that one is also what? An expense. So bad debts. We break it. Let's check the figure for the bad debts. Look at the question together. What is the figure for bad debts after the insurance? We have 10,500. So we break it 10,500, and that becomes the bad debt. So after bad debt, what is the next thing we are saying? Discount received. We've already added it to what? Our income. So we move on. The next thing, discount allowed. This is always an expense. Discount allowed is the monies that you said those that are paying you shouldn't pay. So it means you allowed the discount. That money that you allowed that they shouldn't pay becomes an expense to you. So anytime you see discount allowed, kindly add it to your expenses, because it is always what? An expense. If you don't see discount allowed, I said something in the beginning that will give you just discounts. One will be at the left and one will be at the right. The one at the right is always discount what? Received. Then the one on the left is always a discount what? Allowed. So even if you don't see discount allowed as a word, and you see just discount, and there is two numbers, you use one for the receipt, then the one on the left on the debit side will be your discount what? Allowed. So you have to bring that one as part of your expenses. So here they gave it to us discount allowed, so we'll pick the figure as it is, then we'll take it from there. So let's go and bring our discount allowed, then we'll add it to our expenses. So the next one is discount allowed. Let's look at the discount allowed. The discount allowed is 22740. And don't forget, anytime there's an expense, you have to go and check the additional information. So here, when we check the additional, look at the question on your screen. There's nothing like discount allowed. So we write the figure as it is. Let's move on. After discount allowed, what is the next thing we are seeing? Bank and cash. Bank and cash represents the amount of money that is left in your bank account and in your coffers, or your cash that you have. As a business, the amount of money left in your coffers or your account, it is not an expense, right? So this is not an expense, right? Let's move on. So the next one after cash, bank and cash, is wages and salary. This is an expense, because this represents monies that you pay your workers. Since you pay, it becomes what? An expense. So we need to write it. But don't forget, before you write the amount, check the additional information. So let's proceed. So we have wages and salaries. Let's check the amount. Wages and salaries. Wages and salaries. We have 375,000. 375,000. Why did I write the amount directly? Because we checked the additional information and nothing was said about what? Wages and what? Salaries. So we write the figure as it is. After wages and salary, you come back to your trial balance. After wages and salary, we have what? Sundry what? Expenses. As the name goes, this is an expense. So we'll bring it. So sundry expenses. And when we check the additional information, nothing is said about it. So what we do? We write the full amount as it is, which is 9225. So we bring it 9225. Then after after sundry expenses, the next one we saw was about what? Vehicle running what? Expenses. So we'll bring that one. That comes with expenses, so automatically it is an expense. So vehicle running expenses. Should I rush and write the amount? No. What do we do? Let's go and check our additional information if anything is said about that. So let's check. So with vehicle running, let's check. I was about allowance, I was about rate and rent, I was about inventory. Then IV, they said a bill of 6150 for vehicle running, something has been said, was what? Outstanding. What did I say? When you see what? Owings, arrears, outstanding, it means that with that one, you have to come and add. But if you see prepaid or advance payment, that one we deduct. So since we come and add, we'll come and add what? The outstanding. So you bring here, and after the vehicle, you write add outstanding of motor running. So that is what you are adding. So we'll add it to the motor running expense. Let's check the motor running expense. The motor running expense is what? 23475. So we bring the 23475. Then we'll add the what? The outstanding of how much? The outstanding of how much? 6150. So we'll be adding. That's how come it is not in the bracket, right? Let's proceed to the next one. After vehicle running expense, what I'm saying is furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings is what? Our asset. It is not an expense. It means that the furniture and the fittings that the business had, this is the value of it. That is not an expense. Are we understand? Anytime you spend money on an asset, it is not an expense. Okay, that gives you the value of the asset. So do not mistake it to be an expense, but rather that is the value or the cost of the asset. That is not an expense. So do not add it to your expenses. So we move on. The next thing I'm saying is repairs to the shop. The repairs you did to your shop. It is not the shop itself. The shop itself is an asset, but any repairs done to it becomes an expense. So assuming they said repairs to vehicle, and that one would have been an expense, but if it is just vehicle, then it's not an expense. Hence, the repairs to the shop must be part of your expenses, because the shop itself is the asset, but the repairs you made to it is an expense. So that's what. So we have repairs to shop. You add it to the expenses. Then what we have, the repairs to shop, we have 9750. Nothing was said in the additional information, so I write it as it is. Then we move on. We've seen returns, and I said when you see returns like this, the one on the left is returned inwards, the one on the right is returned outwards. And all these, we have used them already. So we move on. The next one is purchase, which has been used. The next one is sales, which has been used. Then the last one is capital. Capital is not an expense. Capital represents the money you use in starting the business. It is not an expense. That is the money I use in starting my business. It is not an expense. So when you see capital, do not add it as part of your what? Your expenses. Have you understand? So the next thing we are doing is we are done checking all the lists, and we realize that all the expenses we've identified them. That doesn't mean you are done. One last thing I want you to check. Go and check the additional information and look for an item known as depreciation. If the question asks you to find depreciation on any of your non-current assets, like I mentioned, non-current assets are the assets that can be seen and touched. The tangible ones, like the vehicle. So UPSA, let's take a school like UPSA, their assets that you can see, their building, their cars is an expense. When you take a school like Gimpa, their building, their things, anything you see is an expense. So just look around you. With you, which assets have you used your money to buy? Any one of them that you can see and touch, it is known as your tangible what asset. So your tangible non-current asset. So when we look at this question, the next thing I want you to do is what? I said we have checked the trial balance or the list. We've identified all the expense. The last one you should check before you can say you are done. It is your what? Your additional information. What am I looking for over there? I'm looking for what? Depreciation. and the question will tell you how to find it. I'll show you how to find it. Then when you find it, you add it to your list of expenses. You add all you can add, deduct what you are deducting, then it will give you the final expenses. We'll deduct it from the net income, then we are done with the statement. Then we'll move to the last statement, which is known as the statement of what? Financial position. That one is very simple. This one I have to take my time to explain stuff. That is how I can lose number. I hope I've made your understanding so simple. And that is the hallmark of what? A's with Horace. So let's proceed with the expenses. So the expenses, I said go and check your additional information if there is what? A depreciation. Let's go and check our additional. So look at the question on your screen. What is the additional information? We are there. Which of them talks about depreciation? The thing. Look at what they said. They said the enterprise provide depreciation as follows. So it means every asset and how we should look for the depreciation. So I'll pick each of the assets, then based on the method of depreciation, we'll find it. And thankfully, all the two methods have been mentioned. So when they say this method, I'll show you how to find it. When they say that method, I'll show you. So let's start with the vehicle. So you write. We are going to first start with depreciation. So write depreciation and bring your column. Then indicate the assets that you are going to first look for its depreciation and bring a bigger bracket and start. So with vehicle, they said vehicle 20% per annum on straight line basis. So they've given you how to find the depreciation. They said use 20% on straight line basis. If you don't see straight line basis, another way the question can put it is find 20% on the cost. It means straight line. So whatever I do with the straight line, if you should get a question that reads 20%, 10% of the cost, this is how I want you to find it. How do we do the straight line? Pick that percentage given. So 20%, which is 20 over 100, then multiply it to the cost of the asset. That means you are doing straight line method. Or on cost, you multiply it to the cost. And what is the cost? You have to go to your trial balance. The value of the assets that is given. That is what will come and write. So here we are talking about what? Vehicle. Let's go look for the cost of vehicle or the value of vehicle. Then we'll take it from there. Let's look at the cost. So when we came to the trial balance, like you can see on the screen, the vehicle into bracket cost was what? 225,000. So you come and find 20% of the 225. Any answer you get is the depreciation that they want you to add to your expenses. So let's do that. So 20% of 225,000. Then you close your bracket. Then what do? We find it for them. So let's find it. So we have 20% of 2250. What do we have? 2250. Are you now punching? Yes. We are how much? 45,000. You will add it to your expenses. Then you are done with the vehicle. Then we move on to the next assets that they want us to find the depreciation. The next asset is furniture and fittings, and that one to 20% but a different basis. They say what? Reducing balance basis. Let me show you how to do the reducing balance. So with reducing balance, you write the name of the asset, which is furniture and fittings. How do we find this? You also find the percentage. So write it for me. What is the percentage they give? They said 20%. So 20% times this one, because they said reducing balance, you will not find 20% on the cost. The only time you find it on the cost is when they say straight line. But reducing, you will go and find the cost of the asset and also find an item known as accumulated depreciation. We saw it when we were checking for our expenses. Yes, the accumulated depreciation of the asset mentioned, you will deduct it from its cost first. Then the answer you get is what you find the percentage on. So here we are dealing with furniture and fittings. Let's go and look for the cost and let's look for the accumulated depreciation. When we deduct the two, any answer we get, we'll find the percentage on it. So let's go look for it. So let's do that. Let's go look for the cost or the value of the furniture and fittings. Then we'll deduct the accumulated. Why? Because the question says reducing balance. Let's go look for the cost. So for vehicle, we are looking for furniture and fittings, sorry. So furniture and fittings, look at the cost. Furniture and fittings. Let's look at the cost. The cost is how much? 9. Let's look at furniture and fittings. What is the cost? Furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings. Are we there? It is what? 75,900. So 75,900. We are going to find that one. 75,900. Find it and deduct what from it. I said because it's a reducing balance, you have to deduct the accumulated depreciation. Check the list. They gave us accumulated depreciation. Then they gave us for vehicle and furniture and fittings. The one we are looking for is furniture and fittings, which happens to be how much? Check your question. It is 15180. So you deduct that from the cost before you find the percentage, and it means you are doing more reducing balance. So let's do it. So 15180. Deduct these two, then when you are done, find 20% of it, and it means you are doing more reducing balance. So let's do it. So 75900 minus 15180. It gives you 91080. Then on this figure is where you are going to find the 20%. So it is on this figure you find, and it gives you 18216. The moment you do this, you are done with your expenses. So we are going to add all the expenses together. Then when we get it, what do? We go and deduct it from the net income. If you get a positive number, it is what? A net profit. If you get a negative number, it is what? A net loss. So help me punch my total expense by adding all the expenses. What did I say in accounting? When you are done, do a line. It means equal to. So you add what you can add first, then the one we are deducting will bring it last. So let's do the additions first. Then we bring the subtraction figure at the last end. So let's do it together. 97,500 plus 2250 plus 421230. So 42,000. Then the next one is negative 4,000, but do not bring the negative, because I want you to add all the ones we are adding first. Then later you deduct what you are deducting. So for now, bring all the additions. So let's do that. So plus 7,500. So 42,000. We skip the negative 4,000. We'll bring it later, because I want you to add all you have to add first and bring the subtraction later. So let's do the additions. So 42,000 plus 7,500 plus 10,500 plus 22,740 plus 375,000 plus 922,500 plus 23475 plus 6150 plus 9750 plus 45,000 plus 18216. Then finally minus the 4,000. So always bring the minus last. So it gives us, I hope you are seeing, it gave us, so when you're coming to write, don't write it on the next line. No, on the same line under the net income where you're going to deduct it, bring it. So on the same line, not a double line, just one line, on the same line of where the expenses ended, under the net income column, come and write what you just found. And we have 665,306. That is our expense. And what are we doing with the expense? I said we are deducting it from the net income. So you put it in brackets. And I say if you get a negative answer, it is a net loss. If you get a positive number, it is a net profit. So let's do the deduction. The deduction is net income minus the expense. Let's go and deduct. So our net income was 581,390 minus 665,306. It gave us a negative number. So you write it as a number. Then when you are done, you will come and indicate, even though it is negative, write it as a positive number, but you indicate that it is a what? A net loss. So write it as a positive number, but indicate it's what? A net loss. So we have a net loss of how much? 83916. Then when you are done, you put a double line under the figure, and that is the end of the statement of profit or loss account. And it is what? A net loss. So you indicate it here that with this question we have a net loss. Then you are done. Why? We did mention that the essence of this statement is to know whether the firm made a net loss or a net profit. So it means that with Amadi Enterprise, they made a net loss of how much? 83916. And that is the end of the first requirement. I'm sure I've been able to make it very simple for you to understand. So as I said, if you have any question, drop them under the comment section. I will attend to all questions. Then I said, if you want more practice questions, I will add the WhatsApp group as part of the description of this video. You can copy the link, join us on WhatsApp. I'll drop some practice questions over there. One other thing you can also do is you can drop your email address. I will email the practice questions to you so that you can practice more for your exams or the quiz that you are preparing for. Are we understanding? Perfect. So now that we are done with the first requirement, let's go and do the last requirement. Then we can say we are done with the episode on principles of accounting, where we are solving the financial statement of a sole proprietor. We have done the statement of profit and loss or loss. The next one is the what? The statement of financial position or the balance sheet. So let's go and take the second requirement. Thank you. All right, perfect. So now that we are done with the first requirement, which is the statement of profit or loss account, we are moving to the next requirement, which is the next financial statement you'll be preparing for what? A sole proprietor, which means a one-man business. Let's check the requirements and we'll know the next statement. Check the question on your screen. They said, prepare the statement of financial position as at 31st December 2023. So when you are done preparing the statement of profit and loss account, the next statement you are supposed to prepare is what? The statement of financial position. So I'm going to show you how to prepare the statement of financial position. But as usual, we write some notes so that we can apply them so that in case we get any similar question, shall we? So with the statement of financial position, the essence is to what? Get the accounting equation. What is the accounting equation? Accounting equation reads like this: that the assets of a business is as a result of its equity plus its liabilities. Okay? The asset of a business is as a result of what? Its equity, then its what? Liability. So if you want to know the statement of financial position of any firm, you are supposed to look for the assets and add all of them together. Then when I look for the equity and I add it to my liabilities, I'm supposed to get a sale. That means your work has balance, or it helps you to know the position of what? The firm. That is basically what we are going to do now. So let's start. If you are preparing the statement of financial position, you first look for the what? The assets. And if you want to look for the assets, we have two types of assets. You look for all of them. What are the assets? We have the non-current assets and what is known as the current assets. So when you look for these two assets, you add them together and the summation of the two gives you the total assets of the firm. That is what you are supposed to do. So in the statement of financial position, what you are supposed to do is look for the total asset of the firm. How do we look for it? You look for the total non-current asset, add it to the current asset of the firm. Then when you add them together, it gives you what? The total asset. When you are done, you come and find the equity of the firm. Add it to the liability, it should give you the same answer as the total asset. And it means your work has balanced. So what does it imply? It implies that the second requirement where they say you should find a statement of financial position, we'll first look for the total asset. What did I say? It is made up of the non-current asset and the current asset. So I'll look for the non-current asset, then I'll come and look for the current asset, then I'll add it together, then to give me the total asset. So that is what I'll be doing first. I'll look for these two assets and add them together. So let's proceed. What did I say? Anytime you are coming to prepare the statement, you write the name of the firm, and we've written the name of the firm. Now the next thing is write the statement you are about to prepare. But I was giving you this particular name for your own understanding. So I will claim this part, then now I'll start with the statement. Let's do that. So now we are going to prepare what? The statement of financial position. So with this also, you look at the requirements and write what we want us to prepare. What are we preparing? So indicate it. Statement of financial position. Assets. 31st December 2023. Then what do you do? I said you should work underline. What are we looking for? The first thing I said you should look for are the assets or the total assets of the business. And I mentioned that the total assets of the business is made up of what? The non-current assets and the current assets. So that is what you look for. So first you indicate to them that I'm going to find the assets of the business. However, the first asset I'll be looking for is my non-current assets. Then you underline it. What are the non-current assets? I told you that the non-current assets are the what? The assets of the business that will be seen and touched. Some of them you cannot see them, but it's a non-current. So I'll give you a list of the non-current. One thing you should put in mind is that the non-current has an umbrella name known as property, plants, and equipment. So anything that you see that falls under this umbrella name known as BP, it automatically becomes part of the non-current asset. So property, it could be building, it could be your factory, anything, it is property. Plant is also known as what? Your factories. So if you hear plant, it is not the normal plants that we see around. No, plant here or the generator, no. It represents your factory. So if you're an organization where you're into production and you have a factory at Tema and another factory at Takrade, it means plant 1 and plant 2. That is what it means. So if you see plant, it means then the equipment, you know equipment. It could be motor vehicle, it could be office equipment, anything equipment, it falls under the PP. So let's first find the PP in this question. Do we find any property in this question? Do we see any plant? Do we see any equipment? We'll list them. Let's check our list first. So according to our list, the first one is inventory. We've used it. Then we see what? Vehicle. Vehicle falls under what? Equipment. So that is the first one, non-current assets we've identified. Then you come and write it here. Vehicle. Later, we'll be writing their figures. But for now, just give me the list that you can find. Are we understanding? Let's check if there is any plant, property, or what? Equipment. After vehicle, we saw trade receivables, no, trade payables, drawings, general expense, allowance, rent, insurance, bad debt, discount allowed, discount received, bank, wages, sundry expense, vehicle running expense. It is not the same. Then furniture and fittings, it still falls under what? Equipment. So we bring it also. So we've seen an item known as what? Furniture and fittings. We have seen another non-current what? Assets. Then the next one is repairs to the shop. It is already added to the expenses. So it is not going to be part of the what? Non-current assets. Assuming it was just the shop, we would have added it. But here it is the repairs. So that one is an expense. Are we together? Let's move to the next one. Lovely. The next one is retained. We've done that. Purchase sales capital. So it means that these are the only property, plant, and equipment in the question. But when you are done, check for these items. Check whether you see investment. If you should see investment, you need to bring it. If you should see goodwill, you need to bring it. So these are the few non-current assets I've given to you as notes. I'm sure when you're solving questions, you always see things around this area. So now that I have been able to check all my questions, and these are the only two things I saw about the non-current asset, we are now going to write their what? We are going to write their values. Are we understanding? Let's go and write the values. I'm sure you are done writing your notes on the non-current asset. Let's go and find the values. So with the values, when it comes to non-current assets, we write 3 values about them. What are the values? You create a column for each. So with the non-current asset, you have to write the cost of it first. So bring your CD sign that will represent the cost. Then another thing you are supposed to write about it is its accumulated depreciation. Accumulated depreciation. Then you also bring your CD sign. Then you now look for something known as NBV. It is known as net book value or carrying amount. These are the 3 things you are supposed to write about the non-current assets you've identified. And I told you that the cost represents its value given in the trial question. Then you realize that they also give you accumulated what? Depreciation. But I will show you something to do when you get to the accumulated depreciation. Let's do that. So let's go and bring the cost of it. What is the cost of vehicle? It means go to the trial balance. Its value, bring it. And they gave to us vehicle cost. It was 225,000. So you bring it. 225,000. Then we also need the cost of furniture and fittings. And when you check the furniture and fittings in the web, where is it? Furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings. Furniture and fittings. We have the 75900. 75900. So let's bring it. 75900. Then when you are done, add it up and close it for me. Add it up and close it for me. That's what you do. So when you write the information about the cost, add it up and close it. And the line here, make it a double line. Go for it. So let's do 225,000 plus 75900. What do we have? We have 300,907. Then you are done with the cost. The next thing I want you to come and write about the assets are their accumulated depreciation, which was given in the trial balance. So let's go and check our accumulated depreciation. Alright, so as I said, we are moving toward the accumulated depreciation. With accumulated depreciation, it is the next thing we find about these assets. How do we find it? Let's go and check the trial balance. They gave it to us, but I'll show you something over there, shall we? So with the accumulated depreciation, let's check the question on your screen. What was the accumulated depreciation he gave about vehicle? It was given. Check it. So they said accumulated depreciation, column, vehicle. It was how much? 45,000. I would have written the 45,000, but I'm saying I'll show you something. When you get to the statement of financial position and you are writing the accumulated depreciation, it is the summation of what you see in the list and the depreciation you found when you were solving for your expenses to add it together. So the accumulated depreciation you can find in the list about vehicle is how much? 45,000. We'll say this 45,000 plus the depreciation we worked for in the expenses. So go back to your statement of profit and loss. What What was the expense we found on vehicle? Check. What was the depreciation we found on vehicle? Check. Good. It was how much? 45,000. So you add this 45,000 we went for to the one in the list. Let's check calculated in the list again. Calculated in the list was what? 45,000. So the 45,000 plus what you have worked for in your expenses, we'll add them together. So 45 gives us how much? 90,000. So we'll bring that one here. So when you get to calculated, it is the summation of what has been given in the list, plus if you have looked for any depreciation in the expense concerning that same asset, you have to add it. But if you realize you've not worked for any, just write the one in the list. Have you understand it? Then when you write it, what do we do to this calculated? We deduct it from the cost to give us what is known as the net book value. So since I'll be deducting, it has to be in what? In bracket. So we're going to have 225,000 minus the 90,000, which gives us the net book value. So with the NBV, we don't look for it in the question. It is not given in the trial balance. We work for it. How? It is the cost minus what? Accumulated. That is how come I put the accumulated in bracket, because I'll be deducting from the cost. Then it will give me my net book value. Let's look for the net book value. It is 225,000 minus 90,000. And we have 135,000. So 135,000. That gives you the net book value. Let's go and find accumulated for furniture and fittings. What did I say? They will give you one in the list. Let's go there. So let's go to the question. Look at the question. What is the one they gave in the list? Let's look for it. The one in the list. What is it? Look at the question on your screen. So the one in the list, accumulated depreciation. The one in our list for furniture and fittings is what? 15180. Do we write just that one? No. Let's go and check our statement of profit or loss. We work for a depreciation. What did we get? We had 18216 for that. Add that one to the what? 15180 that you are seeing. Let's do it. So 15180 plus what we work for under the statement of profit and loss, under the expenses, we work for depreciation again for the furniture and fittings. Add it. What did we get? We have 18216. So add the two. When you add the two, what do you get? You get 3396. So we are deducting. Here too, you find the total. But with the total, please don't put it in brackets. So let's deduct first and get the net book value. So 75900. Let's do it. 75900 minus the accumulated we just found. 33396. What do we have? We have 42504. So now give me the total for the accumulated first. I said the total, what do we do? Don't put it in brackets. So 90,000 plus 33396. What we have? 12396. The total, do not put it in brackets. Now with this also, we look for the total. But please, with the net book value, do not lose it, because this now happens to be the value of your non-current asset, which I said will add to our current asset to give us the what? Total asset. So with the last one, don't bring any line. Just bring this line, add the two, and leave the amount. Don't lose it. Unlike the two that I have done, right? Let's go. So let's go and add up. We have 135,000 plus 42504. What we have? 177,504. So I am done looking for my what? Non-current asset. What did I say makes up the asset? It is the non-current asset and the what? Current asset. So if you are done with the non-current, move to the next line and tell them you are looking for what is known as the current asset. Then you underline, then we give the list of things that makes up what? The non-current, the current what? Asset. Let me give you a note on that. When you get to the current assets, do not misarrange them. The way I will arrange them, that is how you should always arrange them in the question. Are we following? So this is how we find it. The non-current asset is always made up of these items. The first item is inventory. I'll show you where to get this from. Then when you bring your inventory, the next thing is trade receivables. Bring this figure also. Then come and learn something known as allowance for receivables. I'll also tell you where to go for this figure. Then check whether there is any prepaid or advancements that has been made. Bring it. Then bring what is known as bank and cash. In some questions, you see cash and cash equivalents. It means the same thing. This is what makes up your current assets. You bring inventory, trade receivables, less allowance for receivables, then check if there is any prepaid or advance payment. Then you bring your bank and cash, or cash and cash equivalent. So let's do this together. When I write or look for the item together, what are we doing with this? We are going to look for all these items, add them together. That is our current asset. What do? We'll come and add it to the non-current asset, so it gives us what is known as what? Total asset. Let's do that together. So under the current asset, what we have? Bring your inventory. And with this inventory, which inventory am I talking about? With this inventory, when you write, go and pick the inventory in the additional information. Are we understanding? Let's go to the additional information. The inventory you see over there is the one I want you to bring over here. And here, write it under this column. It doesn't mean we are adding it to the items over here. The two line shows I am down in the top, so I'm starting with a new item. And that is the only thing that sums out to be the what? The current asset. Let's do it. So what is the inventory in the additional information? That is the one I want you to bring here. The inventory in the additional information, go to additional information, III. The inventory over there is 80150. That is the inventory you bring. After the inventory, what is the next according to the note I gave you? The next thing is trade receivables. You have to bring it. Here it is according to. So trade receivables. Let's bring the trade receivables. Let's go and check our work. Check the list. After inventory, vehicle, trade receivables, what is the figure? 120,000. So let's bring the 120,000 as our trade receivables. Then after the trade receivable, what did I see? Come and learn something known as what? Allowance for what? Receivables. So let's bring it. Less allowance for receivables. Here, you realize that with allowance, we have one in the trial balance and we have one in the additional information. The one I want you to bring in the statement of financial position is always the one in the additional information. Are we understanding? Let's go to the additional information for the allowance. When we got there, we realized that they said 5%, or sorry, they said the question says 5% of trade receivables, and we already found it when we were comparing to know whether it's an expense or not, and we had 6,000. So you bring that 6,000 figure here, not the difference any longer. This time around, that 5% of the trade receivables, which is the 6,000 we got, that is what I want you to bring over here. Are we understanding? Lovely. Less. So less, so it means that that 6,000 should be in brackets. Then the next one is, let's check if there was any prepaid or advancement. And here, the prepaid or the advancement, go and check additional information. Was there any expense that was a prepaid? You have to bring it. So let's check. When we're mentioning the expenses in addition, was there anyone that was what? A prepaid or an advancement? Let's check the additional. I said check the additional information. So let's do it. So which of them was a prepaid or advancement? Let's check II. They said II. Rent and rent. has been paid in advance, so there's an advance payment. So it means we need to bring that one. So what is the advance? It is the rate in rent. And how much is it? They said it was advanced by 2 months, and we pay 2,000 every month. So it means that 2,000 and 2,000 times 2 gives us how much? The 4,000. That is what I want you to bring over here. So bring it. So you write advance of rates and rents, which is 2 times the 2,000. So it is 4,000. Bring it. So assuming there was no prepayment or no advance payment, we skip to the next one. Then now what is the next one I said we should bring? Bank and cash. So let's check. Was there any bank and cash in the question? If there is, bring it here. If you don't see bank and cash, I said you see what? Cash and cash word equivalent. It's the same thing. So let's bring our bank and what? Cash. So we have bank and cash. What is the figure of the bank and cash? What is the figure? Let's check our question together. It's on the screen. Let's look at our figure. Here is how much. Bank and cash. How much is it? 24860. We have 247, sorry, 860. So when we bring this brings us to the end of the current what? Assets. So let's add all of them together. Then we will add it to our non-current what? Assets. So I said on the same line, bring it here. Then when you add it, bring the figure and add it to the what? Non-current asset. So help me punch it together. Let's punch it together. What we have? 80157 plus 120,000. I said there is minus. What do we do? Don't bring the minus. Always bring the additions first before the minus. So plus 4,000 plus 247860. So 247860. That was the cash and what? Bank. So we have to bring that cash and bank figure. Add it, then later we will add it to our non-current what? Assets. Are we together? So that is basically what we are talking about. So when you bring all the additions, then the subtraction flows. Minus 6,000. This is how I always want you to watch it. Bring the additions first before the subtraction. So we have 446010. So this one we are adding. So I will not put it in brackets. So when you add all together, close it. So non-current asset plus current asset, it gives you total asset. So you write it for them, total asset. And that is the first thing we were looking for, the total asset. So let's go and add the two assets together and let's find what we get. So 177,504 plus 446010. What we have? We have 623,514. What does it imply? It implies that when we add our equity and our liabilities together, we should get the same figure. Then we can say our work has been balanced or we are correct. So since I have found my total asset, I can now move on and find the other elements. Anytime you are done with assets, the next thing I want you to find is your equity. So I'll show you what makes up your equity. Is that clear? So let's move on to the equity. You continue from here. So when you're continuing, you tell them since you are now finding the total asset, the next item you are going to find is equity and liabilities. Then you underline. What is the first thing you are going to find between the equity and liability? You are going to look for what? Equity. So tell them. Then what comes under the equity? That is what I'm going to show you. With equity, the first thing you should always bring is your capital. So bring your capital. Capital. Let's go and check the work for our capital figure. Let's check together. Look at the question on your screen. Look at the question on your screen. What is the capital figure the question gave us? The capital figure was the last figure after sales in the list. Check. It was 731280. So bring it here under the second column. 731,280. So I'm looking for the equity first. Then when I'm done, I'll go and look for the liabilities and I add them together. Then it should give us the total assets. Is that clear? So some of you are used to some other format, but this is what is accepted by the standard. So bring your capital. Then after your capital, we are saying that add your net profit. If the statement of financial position is solved, you add the net profit, you need to add. But if you get a net loss like we have to come and deduct instead. So with you, when your statement of profit or loss, it is a net profit, you have to come and add it to the capital. But if you realize you have a net loss like we did with this question, you rather what? Deduct. So let's do that. So let's net loss. So let's bring our net loss. What is the net loss that we had when we were solving the question? What was the net loss that we had? Let's go and bring our net loss. All right, perfect. So as I was saying, so when you are done, your equity, you have to bring your capital. Then if it's a net loss you had, you deduct. But assuming you had a net profit, you would have added. But with this question we are solving, we had a what? A net loss. So we have to deduct. And what was the net loss? Go and check your statement of profit or loss. What was the net loss? Yes, we had 83916. So we are less 83916. So less it. When you less, then we move on to the next one. So let's less it together and take it from there. What we have? 731280 minus 83916. What we have? We have 647,364. So when you are done adding or lessing the net profit or net loss, the next thing you should do to this figure is you are supposed to come and less what is known as what? Drawings. Less what is known as what? Drawings. Now with these drawings, assuming we are solving, you realize when you go to the purchase, I told you check additional information. If there is any goods withdrawn, that one is also drawings. Like if you get here, you add that drawings to the drawings in your trial balance and you come and deduct. But in this question, the only drawings we have is the one in the world, the trial balance. So we just pick that one. Assuming we have one in the trial balance and also in the additional information, there was goods withdrawn, then we have to add the two before we less. But here is just one. So let's come and less it. Then we can say we are done with what? The equity. Then we come and add the liabilities, then we are done. Have you understand? So let's do that. So less another one. Less drawings. So let's check our trial balance and less the drawings from it. Let's check our trial balance. Look at the question on the screen. Look at the question on the screen. What was the drawings figure? The drawings figure was after the trade payables, and it is how much? 180,000. So come in less it. So let's say we put it in bracket. Less 180,000. Less it. So we can get the final equity figure. So minus 180,000. And at the end, we have 467,364. So it is this figure that we are coming to add the liabilities to it. So as I said, because of the board constraint, we will now write the final equity we add, then I'll come and add the liabilities. Then I will add the two together. It's supposed to give me the total assets that we are what? We are solving. So I am coming to add the liability to the equity. Then we can say we are done with our statement of financial position. So let's do that. Let me clear the board, then we'll add the liabilities. But for you, you have to continue writing it. Are we together? Okay. Alright, so because of the board constraints, I've rewritten the equity so that we can continue and to make the present a bit better. So when we are done with the total asset, we needed to find the equity and the liability. I found the equity, and this is what we ended with. This is the equity figure. Now what do we do next? We will now find the liabilities. And the liability acts like the asset. We have Now, let me give you notes on the liabilities. So with the liabilities, we have what is known as non-current liabilities. So if you are solving the question, I want you to check if these items are in the question. They should form part of your non-current liability. Loan notes or loan. Then you check if there is what? Debenture in your question. These two things are always part of the non-current liability. Then when you are done with the current liability, it is made up of first, bring your trade payables. Then if there is any interest on loan, you bring it. Then with the debenture also, if there is any interest on the debenture, you will bring it. Then check if there is any tax, you will bring it. And this is what mostly. Then the next thing is check if there was any owings, arrears, or outstanding. You will bring all these. And this is what makes up the current liability. So this is for your notes sake. Write it somewhere. Then when you get a question, you have to check for all these items. If they are in the question, you add it to the equity. If they are not in the question, you ignore. So for me, let's go and find out if there is any non-current liability in the question. Let's go to the question we are solving. Let's go to the question we are solving. Is there any non-current liability? What did I say you should check for? If there is any loan note or debenture, check our question. And when we check our question, there was nothing like loan, there was nothing like debenture. So it means that with this question, there is no non-current liability. But for you, if there is, this is what you do. When you are done with this, move to the next line and write that you are looking for liabilities. Indicate that you are looking for the first thing, which is the non-current liability. And any of these, if both are there, bring it. If just one, bring it. By this question, when we check, there is nothing like that, so we will not bring it. So it means I have to move on to the current what? Liabilities. So that is the first and only liability in this question. So I write current liabilities. Then I will underline it. What is the first thing I said we should look for? Trade payables. So let's look for our trade payables in the question. What are we doing? We are going to add it to the equity. So I write it under the equity. What is our trade payables in this question? What is our trade payables? So our trade payables is how much? 150,000. Check the question on the screen. You find the trade payables 150,000. Then you bring it. When you are done, let's check. Is there any interest on loan? There is no loan in the question, so there is no interest on loan. There is no debenture in the question, so there is no interest on debenture. It means the next thing I have to check is tax. When I check, there is no tax in the question also. Check the question on the screen. Realize there is no tax. Now let's check for any owings or arrears. Here, you go and check your additional information. If there was any owings or any arrears, you need to bring it. Let's look at it. Or outstanding, you need to bring it. So let's check our additional information. In our additional information, they said, check the item. A bill of 6150 for vehicle running was outstanding. Since this is an outstanding, we need to bring it as part of our current liability. So we write vehicle running outstanding. We'll bring the figure. What is the figure they said is outstanding? They said how much? From the question, it says 6150. So 6150. And that is the only liabilities we have. What did I say? It means you are coming to add the equity to the liabilities and it should be the same as our total assets. So let's bring it. Close it. And the final answer you get is known as your equity and the liabilities added together. Let's go and add and see if it matches with the total assets we just found. Let's go. So we have 467,364. 467,364 150,000 plus 6150. And what we have 623,514. And this is what we have. So check your total assets. Did we get the same thing? If yes, then it means your wealth has got balanced. So check your total assets. So when we added our liabilities to our equity, we had 623,514, and that is what you write. The name of that figure is equity and liabilities. Then when you get this, it means that your work has what? Balance, and can be assured of your aim. So this brings us to the end of financial statement for a sole proprietor, or the statement of profit and loss account, and also the statement of financial position for a sole proprietor. So basically, I'm sure I've been able to make this topic very simple for you to understand. So as I said, don't forget to subscribe if you are new to this page, like, comment, and share it to your other colleagues to also have accounting made this simple for them. And don't forget that when it comes to Ace with Horace, our aim is to make accounting, maths, and anything maths related very simple. So please, thank you so much for your attention. See you in the next episode. Bye bye.